Welcome, everyone. Hi, my name is Chris Stewart. I'm the president and co-founder of Pocket Radar Incorporated, and also the lead entrepreneur in residence here at Sonoma State University. Welcome to our First Tuesdays event of 2021. First Tuesdays is a series of informal events held every month of the school year. These events aim to promote innovation at SSU and in the North Bay by providing opportunities for students to connect with seasoned entrepreneurs and learn more about our programs and potential opportunities to create new ventures. For more information about this and other SSU entrepreneurship programs, please visit sbe.sonoma.edu/entrepreneurship. And you'll see a link to this site will be available in the Zoom meeting chat, so you can follow up on that site. So as a manager, entrepreneur, and scholar, Dr. Anisya Fritz's global business experience spans 25 years across multiple industry sectors, including academia, supply chain management, humanitarian relief, and ultra-premium wine. Anisya Fritz, PhD, is the lead instructor for the Certificate in Wine Business Entrepreneurship at Sonoma State University. Most importantly, she is the proprietor of Lynmar Estate, a family-owned producer of ultra-premium Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. The author of numerous articles on competitive strategy, international entrepreneurship, and humanitarian relief, Dr. Fritz has been published in multiple leading journals, including the Harvard Business Review. Calling on her deep training and knowledge of strategy, she integrates disparate information from markets and balance sheets, as well as company culture, to craft outcomes that create forward momentum in her company and those of her students. Welcome, Anisya.
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you virtually. This is our life nowadays, this virtual connection. Chris and Ray and Sergio, thank you for having me, and everybody at SSU. It's my special happy place. So it's a great pleasure to meet you this way. Chris asked me to tell you a little bit about my story and my entrepreneurial journey, and I will try and do that in the first 15 minutes, and then we go to questions. My story is not a remarkable one. It's actually a very ordinary American story. I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States at 17 years old with one red suitcase and $80 to go to college. And I got an undergraduate degree in business. And then when I finished my undergraduate degree, I only had enough money to get through 3 years of college. Actually, my uncle had helped me through 3 years of college. And so he said I could, so I finished my undergraduate degree in 3 years by going to summer school and doing extra credits and not having any fun at all. And just like working my way through college. And it was sort of a trial by fire. I was either sink or swim. I had left India where my alternative was an arranged marriage. And so by the time I came here 3 years later, I was 21 years old. I was too old probably for the marriage that my parents wanted for me. So I was sort of stuck. And so when I finished my undergraduate degree in business at Loyola College in Maryland, I looked around to see what options I had. And like many foreign students who come to the United States to study, I realized I didn't have a visa to do anything. At that time, you couldn't get an internship, you couldn't get a job. So my one option really, I had two options. I could go back to India and have an arranged marriage, or I could go to graduate school. So the summer between my undergraduate, after I finished my undergraduate, I was a very poor student. I went to live with my uncle and aunt in Nebraska because they were the only ones who would take me in, and I had no money to support myself and I couldn't get a job, obviously. And I started applying to graduate schools and applied to a number of MBA programs and got into a number of them, including the Stanford Business School, which was unusual at that time. I wish I had, because I probably would have been a tech entrepreneur if I'd gone to Stanford, but I didn't, because they didn't offer scholarships for MBA students. And then somebody told me I met a professor from Virginia Tech. He said, you should really think about applying to a doctoral program because the opportunities for financial assistance are much higher in a doctoral program. So he gave me an application form and he said apply to the business school, and I didn't know what to apply in, so I applied for a PhD, and he said apply for a PhD because your chances of getting financial assistance are the best when you apply for a PhD. So I applied for the PhD program, and I got a call from the chair of the department, and he called me and he said, "We like your application." I mean, I was 20 years old. He said, we're experimenting with taking kids directly from the undergraduate program into the doctoral program. So if you'd like to experiment with us, we'd love to have you, but I need you to come for an interview. And I didn't have money for the plane fare. And this was before we had Zoom. And so I had not met him face to face. And so we started having a series of phone calls. And over the course, and this is where I fell in love with academia and humanity in academia, because this professor started, calling me like every other week just to talk to me about the program, to learn a little bit more about me. And we sort of set up a connection. He never met me, realized I was a foreign student and had sort of all these extra application processes to go through in order to get my papers all organized. And so I would apply and send it to him, and he would walk it over to the international student office or to the financial aid office, and I got in, and Dr. Lishert was my chair professor at Virginia Tech. I met him for the first time on the first day of my doctoral program, and he, from the moment I met him, he was my mentor. He showed me about the humanity in academia, and I resolved then. Because I knew at that point that I was going into a career of being a professor, because that's what you do when you get a doctorate. I didn't know any better. I wanted to be like him. I wanted to be the kind of professor who connected with their students and saw within each one, even the ones where it wasn't visible, the potential. And he always told me his goal was to create students who were better than he was. He said, "Anisha, I am a success if you publish more articles than I have and get better teacher evaluations than I do." And I just thought that was so beautiful. I mean, it really appealed to the idealist in me that there was somebody that wanted me, this brown immigrant young woman, to have a career that exceeded this very beautiful, noble Midwestern man who was so erudite and somebody that I just admired and looked up to so much. And so after that, I didn't look back. I finished my doctorate and had a 10-year career as an assistant and associate professor at Florida International University. But I was always pulled by industry because I was one of those academics that got caught up sometimes in the difficulties of academia and sort of saw the politics and but I was just fascinated. I chose to do a PhD in strategy, and that's a whole different story about how Dr. Lishert and I arrived at that conclusion. But I fell in love with strategy because it touched every single bit of the corporation. As you study organization, strategy is sort of the capstone, and it is the piece that brings all the other pieces together, that looks at the value chain in its entirety. And you look, you're really saying, you're asking three questions. Where do I want to be? Where am I now? Where do I want to be? And how do I get there? So that was sort of the first part of my journey. Well, fast forward, another 10 years or 15 years, and I ran a not-for-profit, and I did a startup. Mostly because I met Lynn, and he was extremely entrepreneurial, and I was a good number two, and a quick study and a hard worker. So I'd say lesson number one in entrepreneurship, and I think Chris would agree with me here, is just sort of keeping a nose to the ground and sort of learning as much as you can, but working really, really hard. And I think that's where sort of the immigrant story was in my favor, because the one thing I knew to do was to work really hard. So So fast forward to about 2006 and 7, after working and supporting myself from the time I was 17 until 2007. I had a baby in 2006. And so I said, I've worked all my life. This is the first and only child I'm ever going to have. I want to take a year off and just be with my baby. And my husband said, well, and he had just sold his business. He said, if you want to have a baby, then I want to live at my winery. And so many years before, Lynn had bought a piece of property in West County because he grew up in San Francisco and wanted and grew up coming to the Russian River as a child. And when he had the opportunity, bought a small piece of property. It had vines on it already. In fact, he tells the story when he was buying the property, he walked out into the vineyard and there was this woman and she was sort of looking at the grapes and he's like, who are you and what are you doing with my grapes? And she said, my name is Mary Edwards and these are the best grapes in the Russian River Valley. And if I can ever afford it, I will buy a property right here. And it took her about 25 years more and she bought the property next to ours and that became Mary Edwards Winery. So, a lot of luck, but Lynn was running a logistics company for the entire time. So the grapes were being sold. And then there was a winemaker that approached him and said, why don't you start making some wine? So he started the Lynmar brand and they made their first vintage in 1990 with grapes. Before that, the grapes were being sold to Mary Edwards, who was the winemaker at Matanzas Creek, and Tony Soder, who was a winemaker at Etude, among others. The Quail Hill Vineyard, where I am sitting today, and that is our home vineyard, has had grapes and has had a storied history in the Russian River Valley. It has some of the oldest Pinot Noir in West County and in the Russian River Valley. So we moved here about 2007, 2008. I was up at the house with a baby, and this is a time when it reminds me of the time we're in now, where suddenly, the bottom fell out of the market and all sort of the sort of the successful, all the markers of success, all of the attributes of success fell away, and the business was in big trouble and losing a lot of money. So one day Lynn came home and he was just, he was a businessman. He would go down because we live on the hill. He would go down to the winery and come back in a horrible mood every single day. And so one day he came and he said, I need you to come to work. And I said, to do what? And he said, to run the consumer side of our business. And I said, what's that? I mean, of course I drank wine, but I didn't understand anything about how the wine industry worked. He said, well, there's only one way to find out, come on down. And so I went to my first day of work, and my husband had gone in there and sort of said, all these things have to change. And promptly the entire front office, front of the house staff had quit. So our tasting room manager had quit. Our DTC manager had quit. Our wine club manager was 9 months pregnant and was going on maternity leave. And Lynn's like, okay, we've lost our distributors. We were 70% in distribution and 30% direct to consumer. We had just built a tasting room and had just started seeing customers directly. And it was going well, but he said, in this economy, we have to really, really change our model and become a direct-to-consumer winery because all our distributors have dropped us. So 70% of our wine that was going in distribution was now our distributors were telling us that they couldn't sell our wine. And I had no front office to speak of. And so this is a story. So the first part was the immigrant story. The second part is about the story of how theory meets practice. I didn't know, I knew the fundamentals of business, but I also knew a lot of management theory. And I didn't know where to start. So I said, okay, I'm going to start with the principles of strategic management, and we'll start with saying, what is our business model? how much does it take to make money? What does profitability to look like? And sort of did the blocking and tackling to build, sort of say, okay, I have to sell this much in this proportion, DTC versus wholesale, in order to cover our costs. And it started there. And, one question by one question, I started to ask myself, where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? So we knew we were in desperate trouble. We were bleeding money. We were drowning in wine. Our distributors had dropped us and the economy had collapsed. And we had just built a tasting room and we had all kinds of bills to pay. So that was sort of where we are now. Where did we want to be? Lynn said, we need to be where nobody can touch us, where this will never happen to us again, where we don't give control to distributors and we don't give control to critics and we don't give control to suppliers, because we will, as a small winery, will never have enough bargaining power. So we have to know our customers. So we want to be a DTC winery where we know our customers, and where we can really control our relationships and therefore control our future. So that's where we wanted to be. And then the rest of the story is really a story about execution. And I think in the wine industry, it is all about execution. I think innovation happens when you have a business model, you know where you are and you know where you want to go, and you then are able to take the time to reflect on where you sit in the industry. We were a tiny winery relative to, now there are 10,000 wineries in the industry, but at that time there were probably about 6,000 or 7,000. But we were tiny. We didn't have any bargaining power with our customers, with our suppliers, with our, none of it. And so it was really, in my opinion, and this is why I started teaching the class, it was taking one step at a time, looking at the external environment and saying, what are my opportunities and what are my threats? What does the industry environment look like? What does the general environment look like? And then look within the organization. What is our structure and culture and resources? And what does our value chain look like? What is the value that we're delivering to our customers? How can we identify our unique competence, the reason that customers will come back to us, and how do we hold these relationships? And then once you sort of develop the model, we said, what kind of internal organization do you need to have to execute to this model? What do employees look like? And how do you make the employees want the same things that you want? And so how do you build a cohesive, comprehensive, creative team that will pivot with you and be flexible and offer high touch to the customer, but still want process? And so the story of theory meeting practice is I actually took every single class that I've ever taken from undergraduate through doctorate, and I thought it through in my head, and I figured out which pieces, which was the entire strategic management model, applied, and then executed to that. And I believe entrepreneurship is when preparation meets opportunity. When you have a business model and you figured out how to execute and you understand your external environment and you're able to align your resources to take advantage of the niches of opportunity and survive the difficult times, then you find micro innovations, right? Then you come to a period like now during the pandemic, and you're able to say, okay, I know my market, I know my customers, what would they want? What would it take to make them stay with me through this period? How can we be delivering joy, because we're all in the joy business, even in these very dark times? And so probably because of a lot of hard work, amazing people, a lot of luck, we navigated through the economic difficulties of 2008, 9, 10, 11, and then came out in a place where we wanted to be. Our model actually worked out. And along the way, I met Ray and Bill Silver, who were Ray was in his current position, of course, as a director of the Wine Business Institute, and Bill was the dean of the business school. And I approached them and I said, how much theory do we apply in the wine business? And so they told me about the wine business program. We collaborated on a conference where we brought together professors from all around the world to see what the pedagogy of wine business looked like. I think from that conference, they launched the Wine MBA. And I asked, or they asked me, I don't remember exactly, to teach the wine business entrepreneurship course, which is really a course about building a business model and giving yourself the time to think about where you sit relative to everything that's going on in the external and internal environments. I've taught the course now 6 or 7 times over the last 10 years. I see several familiar faces in the audience of people that have taken the course. I see Elise. I saw, well, I can't read all the names, but Evan. I see Evan. Ron Rubin's been a speaker in my course, and so that's it's been a story of evolution, about growing and learning with the industry, but also letting theory and practice come together for what it's supposed to do. A business school education is supposed to be relevant. And one of the big criticisms of business schools is that they are so theoretical and not applied enough. But I believe that there is a marriage, there is a happy place between theory and practice. And the wine industry is actually a perfect place to apply theory, because there are not very many rules about what works. And in the absence of knowing what works, you go back to 40 or 50 years of studies on how it's done and how it's worked in other industries. And while there's no guarantee of success, you increase your probability of success if you are learning off, decades of research and decades of practice that have of this research being applied. So I think that I would say that a lot of my lessons learned came from the classroom, from reading textbooks, and now over the last 20 years as a practitioner, I've had to apply them over and over again. And I'm one of those people that really believes in the power of theory. It's worked for me. It's not perfect. Nothing is. But I think entrepreneurship is also about knowing which doors to open and which ones not to. And I think I'll end there because I'm sort of at the end of my time. Hi, Jeanette. I see you there too. Jeanette was in my very first class in 2012 and has become a businesswoman and an entrepreneur herself from that class. So is that a good stopping point, Chris? I think you're muted.
All right, technology, it finally let me unmute. So thank you very much, Anisya. I think that works well. I really have appreciated hearing your story. That's pretty amazing, coming over as a immigrant with $80 in your pocket and then seeing where you've gotten to, and all the entrepreneurial journey along the way is very inspiring. So, and we appreciate all of your contributions helping out with young people now with your classes and everything. So I got a lot of questions along the way here from people. So I'll also encourage everyone to go to the chat and enter more questions in, and we'll see what we can get to here and answer some of these. But this is great discussion. I really appreciate it. So I love the analogies you put together there, in terms of really about the understanding you're wanting to be able to know your customers and control those relationships. I mean, I think that's true in any business. That's the way we run our business as well, is that it's really about building those customer relationships and maintaining those. And I think that's a great lesson for that. I loved your quote about being in the joy business. I think that's ultimately where we all want to be. So that's great. So I've got some good questions here about things. So, I don't know where to start. It's going to be kind of random, but I think it'll be really good. One question came in from Justin Aronson. It says, once the entire office, front office staff had quit on you, and given your company's financial position at the time, how were you able to maintain and attract new employees to your company in that time period?
Um, that's probably the area where I made the most mistakes. So basically, we put ad on Craigslist. You have to remember it was an economic crisis. People were losing jobs all over the place. So we put ads on Craigslist, and I essentially sat down and interviewed people. I didn't know what I was interviewing them for. I'd always been told hire for attitude, train for skill. So I was hiring for attitude, and some of the people I hired then are still with us. And so I wanted people that I wanted to work with, that I enjoyed being with, because you and I are the customers for our brands. And so, if I was comfortable with them, then others would be. You wanted people, people who love wine are interesting people. They travel, they read, they are widely, they know poetry, they're well educated for the most part. And wine is sort of a continued, I think to love wine, you're an explorer at some level, right? And so you wanted employees that reflected that. And so that was the attitude that I was looking for. People who are learners and willing to learn. But did I do it right? No. Did I make a lot of mistakes? Yes. I mean, I remember Jack Welch once said that, like when you hire people, you're right about 10% of the time. I think my track record was better than that. But, in the early years, it was a lot of mistakes. And, you all know you're in the wine industry. I mean, the people come to us from everywhere. My number two right now, and my right hand, is a woman that came from Goldman Sachs with no experience in the wine industry. On the other, so, and a lot of people come into the wine industry because they want a particular lifestyle, or they see the glamour of it all, and they think but they don't have skills to speak of, and then they're offended when you say that you don't have place in your company for them, because they think they're good. And so that's when, I learned that I had to set up dashboards. We had to set up objective ways to assess performance that weren't personal. And so that's, where are you now? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? One of the ways if you're successful or not is if you clearly define your outcomes and measures that indicate whether you're achieving your outcomes, and responsibilities that go with those metrics. And then, so if everybody's clear on what their job is and what their success criteria are, then people self-select in and self-select out. And so then it becomes less about personality and whether you like them or whether you don't. It becomes about whether they were successful at that job. It's not about a person, it's about connecting the task and the outcome. That's another best practice in business, but it's hard to apply in the wine industry, but we talk a lot about it in the class.
Great advice for anybody doing hiring on that. So I appreciate you sharing that. I also appreciate you sharing the fact that, you made a lot of mistakes along the way. Welcome to the entrepreneurial journey, everyone. That's a big part of it. One of the mantras is, fail early, fail often, right? You're going to make mistakes. The real trick is, do you learn from them and move forward? So I'm sure we've all learned a lot along the way.
I just like to say one thing, Chris. Ray and I have talked about this all the time, and I talk about it in my class. There are several of the people that have taken the class that will attest to this. We are in an industry where people don't talk about mistakes. We are 10,000 wineries, and a lot of wineries are bleeding right now. But will anyone tell you they're not doing well? No. Will anyone tell you that they made a mistake? No. Will anyone tell you that their entire 2020 crop is gone because there was smoke tape? No. So, and I object to that. I think that, while wineries support each other, we also need to share our mistakes, because that's how we lift all boats. And so I will tell you, I've made every mistake in the book, and that's what makes me a good teacher, because the wine industry, like any other industry, is all about falling down and then getting up, scraping yourself off, and moving on.
I agree. I would say that's true of almost every entrepreneurial journey, especially the wine industry. I appreciate you saying that. Someone who's focused on entrepreneurial scholarship and learning, that's really important. You learn a lot from those failures, and when people don't admit to those, they really set the wrong expectations in young people's minds as well, and not understanding that. So that's a great follow-up. So I really appreciate it. So let me switch to another question here. Sasha Baudry says that, what were some of the tools and tactics that you used to really get to know your customers when you made the switch over to DTC?
That's a great question. So everything in the book. First, I spent a lot of time with customers, and then I realized that compared to like really good salespeople and people in the tasting room, I sucked at that. I was good at connecting with customers, but if I didn't know every little detail about my wine, they were like, "What kind of owner are you? What kind of manager are you? How come you don't know this about your wine?" And I'm not a wine person, I'm a business person. So then I started by giving every team member a little red diary, and I would say, please write down anything distinctive about any customer in this diary, and then I would painfully take it and then put it into our CRM. But then, once our employees felt that they were comfortable enough, they stopped doing that. It's the hardest thing to do, is get employees to give you feedback. But we did that. Now we have meetings in the morning before every shift, and meetings in the evening at the end of every shift to talk about what were memorable conversations. On our virtuals, we have one person taking notes while one person interacts with the customer. And you learn all these tiny little details, and it makes such a difference when you pick up the phone and say, "Hi, Karen, how is your dog that you adopted last week?" or something like that. And then you get into a 10-minute conversation about the dog, and Karen feels connected to you. We also do surveys. I've worked with Professor Lee on doing customer surveys, and that we do about every 4 years, where and this last round last year, we surveyed about 600 of our club members and 1,000 of our retail members, and we gathered the data to understand what's important to them, what do they read, what do they listen to, what other brands of wine do they like, what are the critics where they get their wine recommendations, and so you learn a lot that way too. Always listening and talking.
Great advice. So I think that's really important, that issue of making the connection. And I like the idea of the meetings on a regular basis. We my business, we go to trade shows and have a lot of our customers there at one shot, and having that real-time feedback immediately right there and capturing it while it's fresh on their mind is really important. So that's great advice for people. So let me jump over to the next question here. So let's see here. Lee Katz asks, everyone now wants to get into e-commerce to promote direct to customer. How can entrepreneurs differentiate and promote their winery under those conditions?
Can you read that again? I was just reading the question in the chat.
That's okay. Everyone wants to get into e-commerce to promote D2C, right? So how can you differentiate and promote your winery under those conditions?
I'm not sure there's an answer to that, or if there is, I don't know it. What I know is, if you know your customers, you know how to reach them. So I'll say a few things about e-commerce. The market is crowded and everybody is getting into e-commerce, and I don't think there's one size fits all. It's about, what are you using e-commerce for? Are you using it to acquire new customers? Are you using it to have a flash sale of excess inventory? Are you using it to reach to reach your existing customers? What is the goal of your e-commerce, right? And then you have to have a strategy that sort of helps you get to your goal. So we just had a e-commerce offer that we put out, and we chose 2,500 customers that had never purchased from us or only purchased from us once. So we took a sub-sample, and our goal was to see if we could activate those customers. So we weren't looking for a big, you know, number. We were really looking to reactivate existing customers. I think for our winery, like most of you, if you're in the wine industry, we're losing wine club members through natural attrition, and we're not able to acquire new members because we're not seeing people. And so one way to acquire new customers or to acquire new members is to see if the ones you lost last year or the year before or 2 years before, who know your brand and liked it enough to join your club, can be reactivated. Or others who visited you and have had some interaction with you, know who you are, if you can activate them. And that's a completely different proposition than going out into the marketplace and saying, who can I find to buy a bottle of wine? So I think it's like every answer in strategy, we say it depends on what you want from your e-commerce.
I think that's great, Anisha. And like you said before, it always comes back to strategy, really thinking through those fundamental issues of what are you trying to achieve. So a great answer to that one. Thank you. So, let me switch a little bit over here. I've got another message here from Katja Newman, who says, what are some ways you think the wine industry could improve diversity, equity, and inclusion?
So I've been spending a lot of time thinking about this question because, as you know, Ray and I convened a couple of roundtables around this question for the wine industry. And as one of, the few, I guess, owners of wineries that is of color, I feel like I have a responsibility to really think through this question. So I believe in our industry, it's a complex answer. So our vineyard teams are mostly Hispanic. Our ownership is mostly white. And our employees tend not to have, front of the house, we don't have access to a lot of diversity. It's not like if we wanted to have diverse tasting rooms, you could just snap your fingers. I mean, I think in 10 years of hiring, I've encountered maybe 1% of people who fit into sort of the various categories of diversity. So I believe we start with equity and inclusion, the E and the I, because there's certainly a lot of opportunity there. And then I am collaborating with the Wine Business Institute and the Sonoma County Vintners and the Sonoma County Wine Growers and a friend of mine who's an expert in diversity to really think through this question and identify how we can increase diversity. I don't think it's a straight answer. It's not just about hiring somebody of color. It's really about being strategic about it. And I think this is where the industry becomes two industries, right? You have the industry where you have large companies that are corporate owned and have thousands of employees, and then you have tiny little companies like ours that have 30 employees, of which half are Hispanic. So if you look at us, but they are in the vineyard. So the question is, how do you create more? I think it's more about how do you create more equity, more inclusion, and then more opportunity for people who haven't had the traditional opportunities in our industry. And so stay tuned, because I don't think it's a straight answer. I think it is something that requires some reflection, and it's really about how do we create paths forward or paths upward for people. And it's that's been a challenge for us. I mean, how do you make somebody that came into your tasting room a manager? It's not a straight path. How do so um, I think the professionalization of our industry is one piece of it. Understanding which part you want to increase your diversity for is another piece of it. I think the goal is to have more diversity in leadership, because when you have it in leadership, then you naturally have it in every other part of the organization.
Yeah, I agree. So I think that's a great discussion. We need to continue on to make that work. It's a good lead in to one of the other questions that came up from Roger Brooks is, what are ways to break into the wine industry with a transferable skill that you strongly feel is beneficial to the wine industry, but maybe not widely known or understood?
Well, I think it depends on what breaking in means. So one area that we've traditionally had trouble finding talent is in accounting and finance. I think that Jeanette Tian, who is on this call and who's taught classes at Cinema State's wine business certificate programs, has a unique skill set. She can teach people how to understand the cost of goods of a particular SKU or a particular vintage. And these are things that don't come easily. So I think accounting and finance is one area to break in sort of at a professional level. The other way to do it is really be willing to start at the bottom, because this is a unique industry. And like Andrea Alcaro, who works for me, she came from Goldman Sachs. She did um, a season in the cellar, and then she worked in front of the house till somebody connected her to somebody who connected her to me. And I gave her an opportunity because I was looking for somebody that had versatility with numbers, but still knew how to interact with customers. And she's just so talented and so capable that I was like, whoa, so I'm training her to be my successor because she's just that good.
Thanks, Anisha. I've got a couple more questions here I want to get to. Sorry, everybody, if we don't get to all of your questions. We're going to try our best to see what we can cover in the time we have. But one of the things that came up here is really interesting. So what do you see as the projected growth of luxury wine brands in the next year or the next 5 years? And are you seeing trends of people drinking cheaper wine or something more along the lines of Lynmar? Do you think there's going to be more direct-to-consumer imported into the U.S. due to these trends?
Yes, is the short answer. So I think that I understood the question to say, what are the prospects for a luxury brand? I think the prospects are good, because I think, unfortunately, the rich are getting richer, and so there's a lot of disposable income among sort of the one percenters, if you will. I think that's not necessarily a good trend for our society, because we need a strong middle class, and our brand actually is not sort of a $500 bottle. I mean, we're in the $60 to $70 range, which I think is sort of at luxury, but sort of entry luxury, if you will. And we keep our prices low because we don't want to be the wine for the 1%. We want to be a wine for a large segment of customers to enjoy. And so we've been lucky in this particular pandemic because our customers are largely baby boomers who've been confined to their homes and are drinking a heck of a lot. Now, what does that say for 10 years from now? That's sort of what I spend a lot of my time thinking about. But right now, they're the ones that are buying our wine. And as people have been confined, they're drinking their cellars. And, what do you look forward to when you're done Zooming all day?
Good answer. I think that it's really interesting to figure out how you're going to differentiate yourself in the market and understand what your consumers are doing and what your competitors are doing, and how do you go back to the strategy again that you're talking about. I think that's great. So I think I've got time for one more question here, and I want to switch kind of back over to what we were talking about before with your entrepreneurial journey. So one of the questions that came up early on from Vicky Farrow was, what was a door you chose not to open?
That's a very good question. A lot of doors we chose not to open. So the one of the conversations my husband and I have a lot is, can you be a successful DTC winery and a successful wholesale winery at the same time? And Vicky, you may have a different answer than I do, but the way I studied strategy is you needed to have a distinctive competence. And when you have a distinctive competence, you align all of your resources to support and reinforce that competence. And so for us, we chose that competence to be connecting with the customers directly. And from that, we focus on the food program, we focus on our sustainability, we focus on the family ownership, the knowing the land, the stewardship, the values, because that's who we are. So we've aligned our customers to our own values. So we feel that there is an internal consistency that supports that distinctive competence. And if I wanted to be 50% wholesale and 50% direct to consumer, I'm not sure I'd know how to do that, because you have to have two heads, and you can't, and in strategy, we call that stuck in the middle, trying to be everything to everybody. So one door we've chosen not to really open is this distribution door. It's an internal struggle in our organization all the time, because we have employees and leadership that push us to go there. But I just don't know how to do both successfully, because each requires a different set of competences. So either you're setting up two sub-organizations, or you're saying, I'll do this well and I'll play a little bit at that, knowing I'll never be as good at that as I am at direct to consumer.
No, I appreciate that a lot. I understand exactly that coming to my business. So, it all comes down to focus and being able to determine what you're going to get good at. So that's a great answer. So what we want to do now, Anisya, I really appreciate all the great answers in the conversation. We were going to take a few minutes to hear from some other wine business entrepreneurs that have been mentored by Anisya over the years.
Oh my goodness.
So Sergio has a video for us.
Elise.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Elise Nerla-Brudchik. I am second generation wine grower and winemaker for my family's small wine brand, Elkhorn Peak. And I am a 2017 graduate of the Wine Business Institute entrepreneurial course taught by Dr. Anisya Fritz. Prior to joining the certificate program, I was working in corporate America. I worked for one of the major wine producers here in Sonoma County. I had no real plan of how or if I could enter the family's business, because it was a one-man operation operated by my dad. Anisya helped me build myself into the narrative of the story, essentially evolving the company's mission statement from one where one man pursued his dream in Napa Valley to the story of a multi-generational family farm with 40 years rooted in the Napa Valley, and one where a second generation was driven to preserve the legacy of their parents' life's work. With this new confidence and connection to the family business, I took a leap of faith. I quit my comfortable corporate gig, and I started working for the family business full time. I focused on sales, and I lived off of my savings until I was able to generate enough money for the business to earn a modest paycheck. And where are we now? So in late 2019, my dad and I bought out the partners and became 50-50 owners of Elkhorn Peak. In the last year or so, we've expanded the business to produce several new varietals. We've developed new sales channels for the business and enhanced existing ones. And best of all, I get to continue to work outside with my dad every week on these new vintages that we grow. I have no regrets. I've followed my 5-year forecast that I developed in Dr. Fritz's class, and I'm more content than ever. And I owe this leap of faith in large part to Anisya Fritz's guidance. And what would I have done differently had I known what I know today? Well, I would have focused a lot more on sales channel strategies. Over the last 4 years of working on a business where my paycheck depends on whether or not we sell wine, I cannot stress enough how sales are the most important aspect of small business ownership. Sales is fuel for small business, and I know that sounds relatively obvious, but it takes tremendous planning and strategy and creativity to set sales goals and to actually hit them. So I'd actually love to take Anisya's course again and build another 5-year forecast, this one with a big focus on sales strategies and sales channels. And I just want to thank Anisya again from the bottom of my heart for just your dedication to helping entrepreneurs and small business owners with your course. And congratulations on 10 years. I sincerely hope to be up here in another 10 years listening to your future students talk all about how you helped them succeed in the wine business.
Hi, I'm Leslie Cisneros, and I'm a graduate of the class of 2014. I graduated a long time ago from Davis with a bid degree. So I've been consulting since 2005 for small premium boutique wineries, mostly in Sonoma County. In a previous life, I cut my teeth at the larger wineries. I was a flavor winemaker at Kendall Jackson in charge of operations from 93 to 2005. I've always been interested in the operational side of the wine industry, and I'm always searching for a challenge and a niche that I can thrive and grow. Because of the certificate program, I was able to launch, along with a partner, a new wine brand in 2015. Our partnership ended in 2018 for personal and legal reasons, and I no longer have a brand. I'm still consulting, because the one thing I've learned is no matter how exciting an entrepreneur opportunity sounds, never quit your day job. My risk-taking spirit hasn't died, and I've learned that I'm more capable than I thought I was. So my journey continues. The goal of this program was to write a comprehensive strategic business plan that everybody would base their business on, and that was achieved at the completion of this class. Anisya always emphasized the importance of turning a profit, and at the end of the program, I totally understood that. Because of finances and cash flow in the wine industry is so complex, I feel that I should approach the business plan in a slightly different way, actually starting from the end, if you will, with the many anticipated costs up front, such as grape costs, custom crush fees, packaging, bottling options, and then decide what varieties, red or white, to make and the source of the wine, whether it be bulk wine or grapes, and also when to bottle, because finances impact virtually every aspect of a business. Not only is it expensive to create a bottle of wine, the timing of the cash flow can be very intimidating if you don't plan everything out, including sales and marketing. I've learned so much from this class, and I just hope the program will continue to go forward over the next 10 years. Congratulations, Anisya, on your first decade.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Tan, and I'm the owner of QB Winery Solutions. I was part of the 2012 cohort of the Wine Business Entrepreneurship Program, and I was taking the course on behalf of Kokomo Winery, where I was the accountant. At the time, I had recently moved to Sonoma County, and my plan was to get a part-time position as an accountant for some small wineries, and I was going to stop doing the consulting work that I had been doing as a QuickBooks Pro advisor. Well, during the course, I discovered that all the small wineries use QuickBooks, and they all have a mess because they're confused about how to record inventory, how to track the sales that are made in their outside point of sale or shopping cart programs. And everyone was confused about the costing methodologies. And of course, no one was doing cash flow projections or having regular financial meetings, which are two things that Anisya said were essential for a successful business. So during the class, Anisya asked me to do a presentation on the costing. So I put something together and it went over really well. Turns out I was able to explain complicated accounting issues in plain English. I also learned that people were really eager to understand this because they'd heard so much conflicting information from so many different sources. So now I am a consulting CFO working exclusively for small wineries, and I manage my website where I have several different courses available to the small wineries. What I learned from the course and what I would have done differently was to create a financial review process. I was busy with the everyday work and, of course, preparing financials for other people to have their financial reviews, but I was not holding meetings with myself. So I now have a board of advisors. We meet regularly and we review not only the goals for the business, but the results. So thank you, Anisya, for the invaluable lessons that you brought to the wine industry. And I hope you'll be sticking around for another 10 years. Cheers.
And if you would
Obviously,
to apply, you can apply at entrepreneurship.sonoma.edu. I'll put the link on the chat. Thanks.
great. Thanks, Sergio. Obviously, some great contributions that you've made over the years, Anisya, and we really appreciate all your guidance and look forward to continuing to help young entrepreneurs. So I want to thank everybody for joining us in today's event. We really enjoyed hearing about Anisya's journey as much as we did and hope to hear more. It's pretty incredible that we get the opportunity to learn from someone based here in Sonoma County who has had such a dynamic career and entrepreneurial trajectory. Michelle, Christina, Tony, and I are really excited to connect with students in our roles as entrepreneurs in residence. We're available for guidance here at Sonoma State. And for the next First Tuesday speaker event, Jeff O'Neill, founder and CEO of California's 7th largest winery, will be discussing why he is leading the efforts to increase diversity and sustainability in the wine industry. Make sure to join us on the first Tuesday of the month at the same time between noon and 1 p.m. on Zoom. Again, you can register online at spe.sonoma.edu/entrepreneurship, and that link is in the chat window for anybody that wants to do that. I want to announce that we will be accepting applications for the Sonoma State University pitch competition starting in February 15th. So be on the lookout for an email from us. All SSU students from any major degree program are eligible to apply and participate. Pitches can be delivered by individuals or teams and will be judged by guest entrepreneurs and business leaders. The Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program offers expert feedback, mentoring, coaching, contacts, and other resources to help prepare student entrepreneurs in advance for the pitch competition. There'll be an opportunity for business students to join a group of engineering students and win $10,000 in cash prizes. More importantly, this year we have very exciting plans to follow up with the program. We'll take the very best of the pitch competition participants to continue working under the supervision of our entrepreneurs in residence through a structured approach for launching new ventures. So please stay tuned. You can learn more about the pitch competition at spe.sonoma.edu/seawolf-pitch-competition. Again, look in the chat window for a link to that as well. So I look forward to seeing some of our aspiring entrepreneurs join us for that. So for more information about this and other entrepreneurship programs, please visit the link shared on the Zoom chat, spe.sonoma.edu/entrepreneurship.